Okay, and we are live.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to our May 12th, 2021 Somers Planning Board meeting. Will everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty and
justice for all. Thank you. Steve, would you please take the roll?
Sure. Chairman John Curry.
Here.
Vicki Gannon.
Here.
Nancy Garbino.
Here.
Jack Mattis.
Here.
Dennis McNamara.
Here.
Bruce Prince.
Here.
And Chris Saberto.
Oh, you're muted. That's why you didn't hear him.
Yep,
Okay.
I was Chris is here.
I'm here.
Okay. Thank you. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our newest planner, Dave Smith. Welcome aboard.
Thank
You
you.
have the mic. You have the floor for as long as you want.
Well, I won't take much of your time. I was on the road today and with some other assignments, and so that's why my background isn't normally the inside of a car, but I'm pleased and I'm blessed to have an opportunity to work with you all at the town of Somers. I'll give you a little bit of my background. I started out as a young planner with Sicardi and Schiff, and Dennis, you may remember those names back in the late 80s. And I started out as a junior level planner and worked my way up to a principal and finally a partner with the firm. We eventually merged with VHB, which is a bigger engineering firm, similar to Woodard and Curran. And then almost 7 years ago, we parted ways amicably. And I hung out my own shingle, and I've been working as a sole practitioner ever since. I have a wide variety of kind of a planning background. Most of my work has been in the lower Hudson Valley. A lot of it is in Westchester County. My municipal clients, probably the most recognizable one is the Village of Sleepy Hollow, where I've helped them since the late 90s with a number of different projects, including the redevelopment of the former General Motors site, which is finally coming up out of the ground. I've also worked with the Village of Elmsford, the Village of Ardsley, the Village of Portchester. One of my other municipal clients is the town of Newburgh. So I think I've got from a municipal standpoint, I have a very good understanding of both kind of the more urban and developed, and then also kind of the rural components. And then a part of my practice is working with the development community, and I have a handful of development projects, including TOD, infill development, kind of the standard residential subdivision, senior housing. So if there's an issue that has come up, I probably dealt with it at some point in time. I have had an extended working relationship with the folks at Woodard and Curran. So we have a very good, I guess, team-wise relationship. And I'm really looking forward to working with you all and with the town in general on helping. And that's the bottom line is I'm here to help and help you make informed decisions as questions come up. And I've indicated this to other members of the town. I'm available. Feel free to email me, call me. I'm available, and that's part of the service that this office provides. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity to work with you all.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard.
I think we all feel very comfortable with your expertise and Woodard and Curran. I think we're in good hands now. Thank you.
Good.
As you all saw in our agenda, the minutes for April will be ready at the June meeting. So first on our agenda is the Fullerton Wetland and Watercourse Protection Permit for the property located at 32 Mohawk Lane. It's an application for the installation of an in-ground pool, patio, and the relocation of a septic tank. I believe Andrew's here. Up, I see you. Would you like
Yes.
to give us up, just bring us up to date where we are, and then I'll turn it over to Steve.
So where we are, there were some comments that Steve had provided on the last go around, primarily with some limit of disturbance. There was some stormwater infiltration systems that I designed to replace the bioretention system, take the roof leaders off the roof and also the patio for the pool. So all of that's been routed to a catch basin and then to a infiltration system. So the latest round of plans that were submitted addresses the last round of comments that Steve had.
That's correct. The infiltration practices, the stormwater management provide mitigation for the disturbance in the wetland buffer. And the minor comments that we had on the plan really related to confirmation of some of the subsurface infiltration rates and the management of the ongoing management of the stormwater system. And that can all be addressed as part of the resolution that the engineering department has drafted. So we have no further comments on this. We find the plans to be complete and they've addressed our comments.
When you're an adult, it's really embarrassing to get, but you have to pretend like this.
So we have no further comments on the application. And any comments that we have can be addressed as conditions of the resolution.
Okay, I guess before I open the public hearing, and I'm not sure who to ask, I guess you would be the best, Steve. If do you know if a notice was sent and was information posted in the paper?
Thank you for reminding me of that. The legal notice was published in the Somers Record on April 29th, 2021, and the adjoining property owners were notified via mail on April 30th, 2021. So the
Okay.
notice was made.
So, Vicky, do you have anyone that's called in or any other method that have you heard from anyone? You're muted. Vicky, you're muted. You got to unmute.
Vicky, I'm gonna ask you to.
Sorry.
unmute.
I turned on the phone and some messages came in, but they're older messages that were just sort of stuck in the queue. But they don't relate to what we're doing now. So, yeah, so there's nothing relevant
Okay.
to this. I mean, it's like spam ads mostly.
I don't think we need to go through those. No.
No,
Someone's
there's
car
one
warranty
question about
expired.
our town meeting strictly virtual, or can you attend in person? And the answer to that, I mean, it's not for this meeting, but the answer to that is we're virtual at this point. There are no town meetings that you can attend at the town
Okay,
hall. So-
great. Paul, would you have anybody that's like in the waiting room or anything as far as you know for this application?
Right now, I don't see anyone in the waiting room here.
Okay,
Just the owner.
okay. So Steve, you feel comfortable? Well, first of all, if the board's okay with it, I will close the public hearing.
I need to open it first,
I
right?
second that motion.
Oh, I didn't open it. Yeah, sorry.
Oh.
No, I did. And I asked Vicky if there was any comments.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
And I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So if I understand you correct, Steve, you feel comfortable with us adopting this resolution?
Yes, that's correct. We've reviewed the resolution prepared by town staff and have no further comments on it.
Okay,
Can I make a suggestion
Sure.
for it? Page 3, there's a slight typo. Middle of the page, you repeated the number 12 twice in the date February 12th, 2022. You know, fly speck
Yep.
level, but it's just needs to be corrected.
We'll get that addressed.
Thank
okay,
you.
good catch. Thank you. Anything else? Anyone, any other comments? All right, then I make a motion that we adopt resolution 2021-05, which is granting conditional approval. Oh, I'm sorry, let me go back. Andy, are you okay with Steve's comments and the comments in the resolution?
Yes, I reviewed them today. They're fine. We can address the comments during the process of construction.
Okay, so then I will make the motion that we had pass resolution 2021-05, which is granting a conditional approval for the wetland permit and stormwater management and erosion and sediment control permit for this site, which is the application of Eileen Fullerton for the installation of an in-ground pool, patio, and the relocation of a septic tank. And for the record, it's located in the R40 Residence District.
I'll second it.
All in
Second as
favor?
Amended.
Aye.
As amended, yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is project review the New York City DEP wetland and watercourse protection for an application for the property route. Basically, it's along Route 100. It's for the herbicide treatment for the invasive aquatic plants. I'm assuming there's someone here from the DEP or DEC to give
Hi,
a
yes.
presentation. Hi, Meredith.
Hi, yeah, this is Meredith Taylor. Thanks so much for having me today.
Sure.
I do have a few slides prepared if you would like me to share them.
Please.
Let's see. Is that coming through?
Yes.
Yes.
Start
Perfect,
it.
thank you.
Okay. So Hydrilla is an aquatic plant like no other. We call it the incredible hulk of invasive plants. It's a federally listed noxious weed with very high reproductive potential. The plant can reproduce from 3 different parts: plant fragments, winter bud, which is the black spiky thing in the picture, and an underground tuber, little potato-like structure that is just below the sediment surface. And so any part of the plant can reproduce into a new plant. It can remain dormant for years. Those potato-like tubers can last for quite a few years under the sediment. They survive drying and freezing, and they can grow in a huge variety of conditions, up to 30 feet in depth. And they can grow in very low light, low nutrient conditions, which allows this plant to grow in a much wider range of areas within water bodies than any of our current invasive plants and all of our native plants. So with our New Croton Reservoir population, we are concerned about spread regionally. This is one of very few populations in New York State and one of the only ones in our region. So we are concerned that fragments could move on waterfowl or on fishing gear or other ways elsewhere, non-connected water bodies. The plant has the potential to block intakes. It can affect drinking water quality and treatment processes. That would be through taste and odor issues, which we have seen a number of in New Croton Reservoir since the plant arrived. We have no way to definitively say if it's connected or not, but the possibility does exist. And economic consequences. The treatment of the plant becomes more expensive as it spreads and thickens. So we're hoping to knock it back now as soon as we possibly can. And we're also trying to protect native species. The New York State Department of Environmental Conservation is very concerned about downstream spread into the Hudson River, where hydrilla threatens the growth of Vallisneria, which is a very important aquatic plant for a number of species that creates a very important habitat in the Hudson River. And DEP has a commitment to protect the source water of the Croton system. When we added filtration a few years back, we've maintained our commitment to water quality and maintaining it to the highest level beyond just our ability to filter it. And if we don't pursue treatment of hydrilla, we would be the only northeastern water supply to make that choice. So for us, it's a very difficult choice to move ahead with this kind of large scale control program, but we would be the only ones to not pursue treatment if we made that choice. So back in 2015, when hydrilla was first detected in New Croton Reservoir and was also detected a few years earlier downstream in the Croton River, New York State DEC solicited an expert review back in 2015. DEP wasn't super convinced by that review, so we did our own review. The Water Research Foundation funded an expert workshop and produced a report, which I did share electronically with you. The experts on both panels reviewing it agreed that fluoridone treatment is safe and effective for New Croton Reservoir as well as other water supplies throughout the US. So that report is shared with water suppliers throughout the country. And we began a pilot treatment. So our first treatments were in the areas on the map here. Project Area A in Yorktown in the Hunter Brook Cove area of New Croton Reservoir, and Project Area B was down also in the town of Yorktown, sort of a little bit further south there. And so here's a bit of a timeline of this project. It's been slow to start. So hydrilla was detected in the Croton River back in 2013, 2014. A group surveying that infestation looked just over the dam and found some more in the reservoir. We began a series of very thorough surveys throughout the reservoir. Annually, we do point intercept surveys, watching the spread. We conducted that expert panel I mentioned back in 2017 and began 3 years of pilot treatments. And the real reason behind the pilot treatments was not so much to test the efficacy of the products, but was more so because we couldn't get our contract in place to do a full reservoir-wide treatment, and we were limited by our budget constraints there. So, but we did use those pilot years to observe how fluoridone moves throughout the reservoir when used in targeted treatments. And we found very, very little movement outside of the treatment areas in all of our testing and monitoring that we did for those projects. And so 2021, we are planning to move into a full reservoir-wide treatment that includes 250 acres throughout the reservoir. And that information was all included in our Article 15 New York State DEC aquatic pesticide permit application, which I included in the packet that you were all sent. So the treatment this year, we are doing 250 acres of near shore area where we have already detected hydrilla. So very targeted, applying primarily Sonar H4C, which is a granular product designed for use in drinking water supplies. It's designed to be used within a quarter mile of drinking water intakes. And it stays very, very localized right at the base of the plant. The pellets dissolve very slowly, treating the plant and not spreading very far into the water. So it's a very contained treatment. And on the map here, this is the area within Somers of the reservoir where we plan to treat. It's all infested with hydrilla currently. And we plan to target that treatment very closely and monitor for levels of the fluoridone. We're using 3 products. So the Sonar H4C is the granular pellet, which will be the primary product used. We'll also be using Sonar 1, which is a slightly larger pellet in certain areas with high flow or higher exchange. And the liquid product, Sonar Genesis, may be used occasionally to bump up the dosage in areas where we're having trouble reaching the target concentrations. So the 3 products are Sonar H4C, Sonar 1, and Sonar Genesis. We're planning to treat from 90 to 120 days of contact time. That will depend on the weather. If we have a lot of rain, we may need to treat a little bit longer, and we'll be targeting right around the plant's 1 to 5 parts per billion. Our permit applications are for a higher dosage rate, and that's just to give us the ability to bump up treatment dosage if we are getting a lot of water coming in from rain and runoff, and if we're seeing the levels drop too low in the treatment area. So we are applying for a DEC Article 15 aquatic pesticide permit, which we anticipate receiving very shortly. We've also applied for permits from Yorktown, Bedford, and Newcastle, in addition to Somers, and I anticipate getting those permits shortly as well. And here you can see the photo on the bottom right is the method for how the herbicide is applied. The equipment on the front end of the boat is the spreader, and they pour the bucket with the pellets into that, and that distributes the pellets into the water. And the pellets are on the top right there. Looks a little bit like kitty litter. And the photo on the bottom left is what the plants look like. Probably in a couple of weeks, they'll be at that size. So you see the large tuber at the base of the plant, and that will grow up from there. Any questions?
I had a couple.
Sure.
Are you required to take the lowest bid?
We would be, but we only received one bid. So
Okay. And then my other question is, when you're filling out the permit, the box was checked for, does the public have access to this water? Body check, no. But the public does have access to this water. Are you going to stop all fishing while you're doing this?
there is no restriction on fishing, and technically we do not have public access. All reservoir access is by permit holders. Yeah, so there is a permit to be on the water.
But
And
those
we-
are that's the public.
Well, it's not considered technically the public since they're permit holders.
Well, I
Public
guess
is
my
in,
question is, how are you gonna take care of that if the public are fishing and the pesticide has been applied?
There's no restriction on fishing. There's no restrictions on swimming within after 24 hours of application, even though you're not allowed to swim. But yeah, there's no water use restrictions here that we're concerned of.
And no damage to fish life.
No, there's no toxicity for fish from this product.
And my last question is, if I read most of the material on the products, this was really supposed to start the first part of May. Is that not correct?
We would have liked to, yeah. We're still awaiting our contract registration. So we are a little bit delayed behind where we would like to be, but we're still well within a good target range for treatment.
But then aren't you going to be treating larger plants?
Yes,
So you're going to need more material.
that is correct.
and that's why you're choosing a higher dosage one.
Well, all of our permits are applying for the highest possible dosage we would ever consider using. And so we don't plan on treating at that high a rate, but that's what we're applying for.
Old Bay, so they gained some advantage.
I mean, I just have a comment. I'm an avid fisherman. I utilize the DEP reservoir system throughout Westchester, and I have in Sullivan as well. And I can tell you from 40 years of fishing, between the phosphorus and the subsequent abatement that we're trying to instill, and the invasive aquatic plants that we see in untreated areas, it is really difficult to navigate these waters in boats, and just trying to angle for fish. It's something that I've experienced over the years. I don't recall it ever being so bad. I don't know how much climate change has anything to do with that, but certainly I think the nutrients that are dumping into the water bodies, and just this influx of invasive species that we see, whether it's hydrilla or if it's the water milfoil or anything like that, has been incredibly difficult. And having worked for the city of New York, I'm really happy to see that you guys are taking an initiative to protect the water source down there, and prevent this from spreading any further into any of the water supply system that we utilize as Westchester residents, and then obviously the city residents that are using for drinking water. So I just wanted to say that I was pleased to see, as a sportsman and as an environmentalist, that you guys are trying to address some of this invasion, literally, that we're seeing in our water courses throughout the county and as well as the state.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? After treatment, do you go back in and for lack of a better term, harvest the no longer actively growing hydrilla, or?
Can you
So
rake it out or something?
Yeah,
we don't do that. The way that the herbicide impacts the plants is essentially they're not going to grow. So as soon as they have contact with the herbicide, they experience chlorosis, so they lose their ability to photosynthesize, and they basically shrivel up and die by the end of the season. It's a slow death. So it drops the growth rate tremendously. So you get a lot less biomass. And so there really isn't a big die off of plant material that would need to be harvested out.
So those potato-like tuber type portions that you showed, which I'm thinking are the underwater portions, they're not going to come back. Do you foresee needing to do a second treatment next year, or is this going to be a one and done situation?
Definitely not one and done. We are contracting for 3 years of treatment. So we anticipate treating essentially this same 250 acres for the next 3 years, and probably beyond that as well. Our target is eradication. It may not be realistic, but there's a sort of functional eradication where we won't see the negative impacts of the plant if we maintain a high level of control, and we may be able to pause treatment in the future, or do more targeted treatments in the future where we're not treating so many acres.
And just to follow on what seemed to be, I'm getting out of Chris and John's questions, how is the public, and I'll take the public as anybody who has a permit or to be there in a boat, for example, how are they noticed that this activity is taking place?
So the DEC permit will require notification at all public boat launches or all access points, essentially. So we will have the yellow danger warning signs. They don't say danger or warning. They're just a yellow notification sign that catches your attention. We will have those posted at every boat access area. We don't see a huge amount of shoreline fishing on New Croton Reservoir. Generally, people access by boat, so we can post all of the boat areas. And then we have an informational sign that will accompany those at the most high use boat storage areas as well. We also plan to do some targeted outreach to boat permit holders.
That's good.
Steve, I have a question for you. Is
Yep.
this kind of similar to cell towers in that, I mean, they get presented to us, but DEC is going to do this, correct? I mean, this is just kind of FYI type thing, right? We have no jurisdiction. I mean, I'm not saying we do or I don't or anything.
The
Let's just say
wetland permit.
we were dead against this. It's still going through, correct?
Well, I guess what I would say is the board needs to issue a wetlands permit
What's the
to allow
wetland?
this to happen by town code. You know, whether that needed to be, I don't think that the board is in a position where it doesn't sound to me that the board is inclined to deny the application. So I don't think you're setting yourself up for a conflict, but there is a permit that by code would be issued.
Okay. That's what I was wondering, because I mean, you know, let's face it, cell towers are a foregone conclusion. We go through it, but basically the federal government is telling us we have to install them, if I'm not
Sure.
mistaken. Yeah, okay.
No, we Woodard and Curran had one of our senior ecologists, a PhD ecologist, review the proposed management plan. We did have a few clarifying questions that Meredith was able to provide us in terms of supplemental information for the specific registrations for the herbicides being used. There is a need when the pelletized products are being applied within 2 feet of water shallower than 2 feet, that there be a special local need registration of the pesticide in accordance with the FIFRA, Federal Insecticide and Rodenticide Act, basically the pesticide registration. And that was all provided and is all in order. And we did review all of that and find that DEP's proposed actions are complete and they're appropriate for the need here. We agree with this proposed program. There are some conditions around that we would make part of a planning board resolution if it were adopted, or we would recommend in terms of the maximum application rates and there is a limitation on irrigation. Not that I think that there are any irrigation withdrawals in this area, but those also be halted during this pesticide application, just so that there's no other damage to unintended vegetation. But we did provide a review by a qualified individual to review this and agree with the findings that DEC has.
Thank you.
Meredith, could you also talk to the seeker process and where you stand on that? I believe DEP is lead agency on that for this.
Yes.
program.
So yeah, we have completed our own internal seeker review. I shared our finding statement, which we just had final sign off on this week. So yeah, the main concerns we had are bald eagle's nest, which does not fall in the town of Somers, but we will be providing some extra care in applying around the bald eagle's nest. And other than that, there was no significant impacts in our findings.
Steve, relevant to your concern about the irrigation,
Mhm.
Your comment is talking about finished water. NYC DEP has a high level of confidence that the finished water will not exceed 1 part per billion, will not have any impacts on irrigation. How often is the water tested, and at what point, like how often and how is it communicated so that that's the goal, right? And so how do we know that that's being monitored and that interested parties are notified if that does happen?
I'll let Meredith address
Sure.
that.
Yeah, so that'll be part of our conditions in our New York State DEC Article 15 permit. So one of the conditions will be, one of the conditions is submitting a monitoring plan, which we have submitted to them. We'll be doing weekly testing through an independent lab not associated with the applicator, and that will give us indications at 10 different points within the reservoir and the distribution, what the concentration is, and that has accuracy up to 0.3 parts per billion. And so because we're primarily using pellets that dissolve slowly, if we do see some kind of increase above our target range, we can dial back any additional applications. So we're reaching our concentration through seven applications throughout the season. And so if we see levels getting too high, we can hold back on subsequent applications. So we have a pretty fine level of control on the concentration within the reservoir. And so in addition to our weekly independent lab samples, the applicator is going to be doing regular sampling within the treatment area at whatever frequency they deem necessary to make sure they're reaching their target concentration. And that work is done by a fast test that the manufacturer of the sonar product, CPRO, is able to do, and they can pretty much overnight results if they need to. So they can watch their target concentrations very closely and have a very, very quick turnaround time on being able to change the dosage rate if they need to. And so we have a very high level of confidence that we'll be able to maintain the target concentration and stay below 1 part per billion in distribution.
Okay, that's helpful to know. Thank you.
Yep.
So Steve, I'm looking for some guidance here. What should be our plan of it? Should we vote on whether to grant them the wetland permit?
Do you need a public hearing?
I don't know. How that would be almost an impossible task to all the neighboring people, wouldn't it? It's a long stretch of, I don't know how you would do that.
That is true.
As counsel.
I would defer to Joe on that question.
I don't know if you... There he is.
Yeah, hi guys. Yeah, I had some trouble on unmuting. Can you phrase the specific question again? Because I was looking at something else while you were stating it, another aspect of an earlier question. I want to make sure I got it right.
Well, I think what we need to do is to grant them a wetland permit. And Steve brought up the question, would we need a public hearing? But with this amount of area, I don't know how we could possibly do a public hearing. I mean, how would we notify?
And I guess the key point here, Joe, is that seeker has been completed with a negative declaration by the DEP. So we don't need it for seeker purposes.
Yeah, that's actually what I was looking at when you were completing the question. So the secret thing is out of the way. That, I mean, I was trying to get it up on E-code. I mean, do we normally have a public hearing in these?
For wetland permit?
Yeah,
Yes.
I thought so too. And as far as how would we do it, I think you just go through a general notice provision. I mean, that would require, I think, a little homework, but I don't think, yeah, see, normally this would come up in the context of a seeker review process as well, but since these guys did their own, it didn't. But I think you probably have to have it and let me answer the question of exactly how to notice it after a little research, and then I'll send you guys a memo on it.
Okay.
So then I guess tonight what we should do is schedule public hearing for the next meeting. Does that sound like the plan?
I think that's your next action, yes.
Yes, and I think you could also probably, authorize to be ready to act that night. I'm sure.
Yes.
Well, I'm guessing it will be relatively uncontroversial public hearing, and hopefully you'll just be able to move forward after you open and close.
So we could have a wetland permit application already. Yes. Okay.
Yes, and that public hearing for wetland permits is specified in chapter 167 of the code.
Yeah, I was looking to see if there was any exemption from it or ability to waive it. I don't really see it. And again, when I take a closer look, I'll make sure that that's the case. But I think your best bet right now is to schedule it, assume you have to have it, and let me get back to you on precisely how to notice it.
Okay. Unless there's other board member comments, I think that's it. Meredith, we'll put you on the agenda for June for a public hearing, and then I think we're ready.
Presumably Yorktown and Bedford and Newcastle are gonna have the same notice challenges.
Yes.
So maybe that one possibility might be to contact their planning office and see how they're addressing it.
For Yorktown, we haven't, since we've had permits in the past, we haven't had to do any kind of public meeting.
We did not have to?
We did attend a town board meeting initially, but subsequently we haven't had to do
And
any
similarly
kind of
here, that renewal year over year may not require it, but kind of the initial approval is the trigger.
Should we make a motion to set the public hearing for the June meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll make a motion to set the public hearing for the next scheduled June planning board meeting.
I believe it's June 9th.
Thank you. I didn't
Yes,
know the date.
June 9th.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We'll see you back in June. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Meredith, I think you just need to stop sharing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is a discussion for the application for the 259 Route 100 site. I'm not sure who's here.
Good evening.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay?
And yes, and Rick's here too.
Yes, he is.
I don't know if you want to just kind of bring us up to speed on your project. I think you probably would have gotten from the last meeting, board's pretty much all in favor of this. So let's hurry up and get it done.
Our feeling as well. Just for the record, my name is Stephen Rabel. I'm with the law firm McCullough, Goldberger and Stout, and I'm here tonight with Rick DiNardo on behalf of Londonderry Group. As I'm sure the board remembers, the property at issue is 259 Route 100. You last saw us on a referral from the town board for a zoning text amendment for the creation and mapping of a new MFR 100 multifamily zone. If you'd like, I can share my screen to kind of bring you up to speed as to where we are on the
Please.
plan. So the plan is not all that different from what you saw, I believe it was back in February. There's some additional details that we've added, and this is our latest submission to the town board. My understanding is that that package has been circulated to your board, but this is still not a full site plan. This is really a more detailed version of the conceptual plans associated with the zoning amendment. The amendment itself is still pending in front of the town board, who's also conducting the seeker review. But we have added some additional details of note. There are now walkways both internally and on the sidewalk proposed. And we've also provided a conceptual landscape drawing. Now, the intention is once zoning is in place to retain a landscape architect to do a detailed landscape plan showing actual plantings and species. The purpose of this is really to identify the areas for planting. So those are really the biggest changes. We've also provided, a conceptual utilities plan. But the layout is essentially the same. It's still 2 3-story multifamily buildings, a total of 24 units, a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms. And if the board has any specific questions for us, we're happy to answer them as best we can.
Yes,
we're all
I have a
ears.
question.
Yes.
Okay, Steve, Linda wrote us a letter, which I don't have in my hand, and I'm puzzled by it because she refers to how many units? And I believe it's 3 will be affordable, correct?
4.
Yes.
Is that correct? Do I
I thought it
remember
was
correctly?
4.
Or 4, whatever the number was, 3 or 4. And she predicts there'll be no children, no impact on schools. I was not aware that MFR 100 was age restricted because she lists the affordable units as going to seniors. And I was puzzled by all of that. Am I correct that it is not age restricted? The proposed zone, is that right, Steve Robbins?
That's correct. The proposed
So I
zone is
don't
not age restricted.
Right, so I'm puzzled by.
If I can interject, I think that's a misunderstanding because what we did was we used the data from the similar units that we have right here on Route 202, and we gave you a demographic breakdown of currently what the tenants are. And based on that, we project that those are the tenants that are going to be in there. There's no restrictions on age or children or anything.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
I have a question about the building. And while I do understand this is conceptual, do you have a square footage on the footprint of the building so I can get a better idea contextually of what the size is?
3,600 square feet
on the footprint.
On the footprint.
Okay.
And they're both
I have a question.
basically identical.
I have a question. Did you at all approach a kind of layout where the center, which you have this, basically people in both of these buildings are going to be looking at a parking lot, which is in the center between the two. Wouldn't it have been better to make that more of a green area and see if the parking could have been, let's say, on the building to the left, to go down the left side of that building and try to reduce the parking in the center plaza between these two buildings? Was that at all ever considered?
Yes, actually, there was 3 different layouts given, and the town board preferred this because they wanted the narrow side to face Route 100. The other layouts were exactly what you said, where they were spun around, where they were facing green space on either side. But the town felt that the town board felt that they preferred this layout so that the buildings look narrow from the road.
Do we, I don't want to start a revolution here, but is the town board qualified to make planning layout decisions versus the planning board? Or do we
I
have
forget-
nothing to say about it?
They are
I
the lead
forget-
agency, right?
Are we
In
the
this,
They're the lead
agency?
agency.
I think they're the lead agency, aren't they?
Yes.
Because
They
it
are the
regards
lead
the zoning
agency.
change.
Yeah, but can we do something about I mean,
only if the site plan comes in front of us, Bruce,
Well-
then we can give opinions on it, but
Well, and as part of the secret process, you certainly can make comments to the town board as the lead agency. And just like with all other agencies that would make comments, the obligation of the lead agency is to take those comments into account in arriving at any determinations that they come to. So you are part of the process, and you'll be part of a specific approval process if it comes before you as a site plan, but you are part of the secret process and can comment on it. And that is your input and your opportunity to provide that guidance that you think they may not, frankly, be, typically in the business of providing.
There's another problem that needs to be brought to everybody's attention, and that is water source. This is a project that will be dependent on septic field. So therefore, you have to have land for that. And then you've yet to drill for your water. You gotta have the right thing for that. So you're very limited where you can put your parking. Forget how it looks.
it just seems to me that this is, well, maybe David wants to make a comment on this. I mean, it just seems to me that everybody's going to be in this apartments are going to be looking at cars. And that seems to me.
Yeah, that might be, but you still have to have a place for the septic fields, and you still have to have a place to drill
I
for the water.
understand that, but the gentleman stated that there were other alternatives that were suggested that I assume considered the septic tank and everything, and the town board decided for some reason that the thinness of buildings or whatever they used as their criteria is, as far as I'm concerned, as a planner, that makes very little sense compared to the present, to the people going to be living in this environment, where it would be much nicer to be looking at a plaza with grass than to be looking left and right at parking. I would really be
In
interested.
building two. Building one has one open space.
Yeah, I know, but it's building two is.
did the
I have
did
a
the-
question.
yeah,
I have a
Dennis,
question. These 3 stories high. Do each of these buildings have an elevator? I see stairs, and I wonder if these buildings are handicap accessible.
Yes, they both are. They both have an elevator.
Thank you.
Did the I didn't read the minutes, or I wasn't at any of the town board meetings. Did they give a reason why they prefer to have the buildings in this layout as opposed to something
nicer?
Forward facing.
Well, building one was always as it was. It was the question of building two that it was, spun around so that it was wider along the route of Route 100. The issue there, I believe, if I recall, was the fact that by turning it that way, we reduced some of the pavement because we were able to use the center area for both parking and access. So between reducing the disturbance, reducing the impervious surfaces, I think that was the reason for that.
Yeah, but if you pulled building 2 a little bit forward, you wouldn't have to have that whole go in and hang a right maneuver. The middle area could be both traffic and the way back, and then put the parking in the back of it. bring it
Right.
forward so it's not staggered back behind building one, have them at the same level, then the parking can be at the back. They both get half view onto green space, and it looks like you'd reduce your impervious surface because you wouldn't have that whole area right in front of what's building 2 now on 100, that would be pavement.
I'm also, if I
Into the back.
remember, yes, if I remember correctly, when we were in front of your board last time, the buildings were closer to the road, and the recommendation of your board was to offset them, to put one back, which we wound up putting one on the right side back. It was,
well,
we had brought two different layouts at that time. This was the one that was recommended that we go with.
Do we have the possibility of seeing your other alternatives where you said that the center is a planting area and not a parking lot?
Well, it's not, what it does is, if you spin the building, it puts the parking parallel with the building towards the back. So,
So it's one long linear parking lot back there?
correct,
I got you.
So you're still looking at the parking lot.
correct.
From the rear of the building.
From the rear?
Right, because two is the one on the right. I'm sorry, I'm on a laptop and the print is small.
Yes, two's the one.
And so that was supposed to face forward to Route 100, if I remember from the original plan.
Yes.
Okay, and yeah, I mean, you would have had some additional green space in building 2, having like a rear yard, if you will, which you accomplished without having parking in the rear of building 1. All right. I mean, again, I guess when it comes for site plan, we can make comments on that and give opinions, but you know, we're not the lead agency. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the logic, but I do understand sharing the parking space to reduce impervious surfaces and things along those lines.
Yeah, but
I agree with Bruce, though. I think aesthetically, this is probably not a great choice, but yeah, but I get the logic behind it.
But they're gonna have to deal with impervious surfaces anyway, so they're gonna, whether it's 10, 15% more pervious surface, then they just have to deal with the runoff, which I'm sure that they're going to be dealing with anyway. So, I mean, to me, a living environment is a lot nicer when you don't have to sit and look at parking lots. Everybody, especially in building 2, everybody looks at a parking lot. I just think that that's, I don't know, David, what do you think on this?
So I think the benefit of having the plans prepared allows for the town to understand the potential environmental impacts. And I think that's what the town board is going through right now as the lead agency. And ultimately, this will come back before your board for site plan approval, and you will have an opportunity to reevaluate some of these design issues as part of the site plan approval. But I think what the benefit of having gone through this exercise is that the applicant has provided the town with an understanding of how they can get the density to fit on the site in a reasonable way, but maybe not necessarily the final product. So that's, again, there's a step that goes on beyond the town board granting the zoning, and that means it comes back to your board.
Okay, because yeah, as far as producing this plan for the zoning change, I have no problem with that.
Right.
Right. But I do have a problem with it as far as the aesthetics that will result in it. And I'm not trying to redesign their plan, but as if it was said to us, there were other alternatives, and I would like to see those other alternatives when they come back to us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One other side note, if you flip building 2 to be parallel to Route 100, the edge of it might in fact be within the sideline setback, which you can't do. You can't build over on the sideline. Yeah, can't build over there.
Right.
If you flip the building, it might impede on the setback.
Wouldn't that just need a zoning variance though, in order to accomplish that?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you had to reduce the, what is it?
Setback.
The setback,
The 40?
I
the
think-
buffer, yeah, that's,
Yeah,
I think if we're in a zoning amendment process now, we're not looking to then come with a non-compliant site plan application.
right.
I mean, I
Anyway.
would flip the building. I would just bring 2 forward and move the parking behind it. That's-
Yeah, I agree with that, at least. Well, anyway, I
well,
made
yeah,
my
but we'll see what we
statement.
get. We'll see what we get.
Right.
If I could just leave the board with one thought with regard to this. Steve, if you don't mind, can you zoom out so that they see the full site plan? I think if you don't focus so much on the little specifics, you'll see how much green space is on the whole project. That whole rear where the septic is going to be lawn and area for the tenants for, picnic tables, whether it's a bocce court or a yoga field. So there's a lot of green space out there. I think if you see the overall picture there, you'll understand even more that there is quite a bit of green space, that they look out on and they can use for activities.
That's
Well,
right, Rick.
I think
I-
what I'm seeing is the long line of a building where there are going to be windows, and what is the vista that people are seeing every time they go past a window? And
Right.
building 1 is advantaged in that left side of the building does not overlook parking. And building 2, both long edges look over it. And I think that's what I'm seeing. I don't know, Bruce, is that also what you're?
Yeah, that's what I'm objecting to. And the idea of having other green areas, that's fine, but we have green areas all throughout Somers. That doesn't mean that people should be looking at parking lots in front and in back of the units. I mean, I just don't think that the layout is the best layout you could come up with.
When you think about it, zoning is such that we don't even want parking in the front of buildings, right? That's the preference of the town, is not to be accentuating and amplifying the parking. It's not the most aesthetically
Right.
feature of a site. So if we're not going to do that as a general principle on zoning in the town, why are we going to have it here as the main vista on both sides of building 2? I think that's what's striking me about it. But yeah,
I agree.
we'll see how we go through the process and where we end up.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, I guess, we kind of want to have this meeting just, to throw out some more thoughts and ideas and give it back to you folks. I guess we'll wait to see what happens after we come back from getting approval from the town board.
Okay.
That meeting is tomorrow night.
Unless Steve or Dave have any more comments.
No, I think that we'll have some
No.
minor technical comments, but not at this time and not in front of this board at this moment. So I think
Okay.
we're fine. We wanted to make sure that that you all had a chance to see the evolution of the site plan and be able to provide these comments to the applicant so that their eventual site plan review is that much more facilitated.
All right.
And again,
Thank you
this is
both.
it's a great project. It really is.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. And we appreciate getting the board's input at this stage as well. So thank
Okay.
you and have a nice night.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Steve. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda, I was trying to combine agenda and Anglebrook. Next on our agenda is application from Anglebrook Golf Club for an expansion of their property. Actually, it's for a patio on their property located at Route 100 and 202.
So just
Hello, Andrew, how
to
are you?
clarify that, Mr. Chairman, there's no application yet made.
Oh, no, I'm
This
sorry.
was
Yes,
just a
correct.
courtesy of the floor for Anglebrook to let you know what will be coming to you as an application.
I apologize. That's exactly right. Evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Andrew Tung from the firm of Gibney Tung Schwalbe in White Plains. Here tonight on behalf of Anglebrook Golf Club. With me is Matt Sullivan, General Manager of the club. And first, on behalf of Anglebrook, I'd like to Thank you all for the opportunity to address the board informally tonight to explain Anglebrook's proposal to extend its clubhouse dining terrace and install an awning over that extended terrace for use this summer. If I may share my screen, I'll provide some background for the proposal. So this is an aerial photo of the Anglebrook Golf Club outlined in the magenta. It's located on the south side of Route 202 opposite Lincoln Hall on 240 acres that was previously owned by Lincoln Hall. It's located in the R120 zone and has a special exception use to operate a golf course, and it opened in 1998. The site entrance is at the near the top of the page. In the center of the site, off Route 202, the entry drive goes into the center of the site and terminates at the clubhouse, the one-story clubhouse building, roughly in the west center of the site. The dashed line shows the outline of the next slide I will show, which is the plan around the clubhouse. Shifting orientation slightly, the clubhouse faces out towards the southwest. That side of the building includes the lounge and the dining area. You can see the view of the back of the clubhouse in the center photo at the bottom. And today there is, along that rear of the clubhouse, there is a narrow bluestone terrace that you can see to either side in view one, which is from the west, looking across the face of the terrace, and from the opposite side, it's a similar view. That terrace today, and let me zoom in just a bit. That terrace today basically sits under the overhang of the rear of the building. It's about 10 or 12 feet out from the face. In the center, there is a extended area that steps down 3 steps to the lawn area at the rear. And that looks out to the golf course. Just behind that, there is a decorative bluestone strip in the lawn, and that will come into play as I described the proposed extension. The proposed extension is basically at the level of the grass in the center of the building, and that terrace in a similar material would be extended out to about where that bluestone strip is in the center, and there would be an awning constructed above that that would be attached to the building at the rear and supported by posts at the edge. This one is a view of that extended terrace and awning. Let me zoom in a little bit again. So as I mentioned, that existing bluestone strip in the lawn is here. It reflects the length of the building at the center. The steps wrap around here, the existing terrace. They would be extended, that terrace at the grass level would be extended out towards the bluestone strip. And the awning would be located above it. It's the darker blue represents the awning that would be attached to the building at the rear and supported by posts at the edge. At the edge of the terrace would be a decorative gravel strip. The extended terrace would slope slightly towards that strip, and the additional runoff from the extended terrace would be collected in the strip and treated below, similar to a dry well. And that dry well would be sized, or the volume of the gravel would be sized to accommodate the additional amount of impervious that is added in this location. So that's the extent of our proposal. The Anglebrook is looking, if possible, to do both the extension and the awning this summer for use for summer dining. In the future, as you see here on both sides, as you saw in the existing photo, there are existing terraces, narrow terraces on both sides of the center, and Anglebrook may look to extend those terraces depending on the usage of the center terrace in a similar manner at the level of the grass, bounded by a gravel strip that will also provide stormwater treatment for that additional impervious area on both sides. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes our proposal. We appreciate the opportunity to meet with you tonight, and would appreciate any comments that you might offer so that we can make our application as complete as possible for the next meeting. And look forward to seeing you again.
I'll listen to any board member comments or anything from Steve or Dave.
I can jump in real quick. Thank you, Mr. Tung, for the presentation. Can you speak a little to any preliminary thoughts you may have on stormwater management for that additional impervious surface? Is that proposed to be handled through existing infrastructure with capacity, or is there anything new required?
There would be as I mentioned, the terrace would be set at the lawn level and would slope gently out towards the golf course and would sheet flow towards the edge. We would put a 2-foot gravel strip at the edge to catch that additional runoff, and a gravel reservoir will be located below that decorative strip and sized to accommodate the additional area of impervious.
Be a dry well.
Yes, it's essentially a dry well. We thought that that was, given the size and location of the improvement, that this would be the least impactful way to accommodate that that additional small amount of additional impervious area.
That makes sense.
I have one question. The what I guess is at the end of you have a I guess it's a bluestone path that goes and cuts out where the it bends out and then comes back in. Is that a wall? Is there a 3-dimension to that?
Walkway.
It's actually just a decorative strip. I'll zoom in again to the photograph.
Yeah.
It's a walkway.
It's not even a walkway because it's kind of floating in space. It's just it was a design feature to reflect the extension of the clubhouse bump out at the rear. So it's basically flush with the grass.
Okay.
And for our purposes, it serves to show where the end of the terrace would go. So it would remain in place and basically be at the back of the gravel strip.
From an overall process standpoint, I'm wondering out loud here if it makes sense to propose the broader expansion and have the site plan amended and approved for that future build out, so that there's no need to come back to the board again should that be desired to be built out in phases.
You're going to get the approval for phases.
Yep.
We'd be happy to do that and to supply the drawings and the calculations for both. As I mentioned, Anglebrook's proposal would be to just do the center this year, but having the sides approved at this time, if appropriate, would be terrific.
One more question. That pathway that you're talking about sloping this this terrace out. Did you ever consider basically keeping the terrace flat without a slope and maybe having a slight wall at the end of that terrace so that you don't have a sloping patio? A sloping patio could be could present some problems.
Yes, thank you for that question. I may have misspoken slightly. So as you see here, from the bottom of the steps to the flagstone strip is generally flat, but there is a little bit of slope. There would be likely 1% slope on the new flagstone terrace, which might leave about perhaps 6 to 12 inches at the edge.
Fine.
And so there would be conditions similar to the edge of the existing flagstone terrace here. This is about 20 inches, so it might be half that at the edge here. So yes, the terrace would be generally level, just enough pitch to drain.
Okay, that sounds good.
So I guess we should instruct them to come back with the plans, and you would have a chance for comments, right? Steve from Woodard and Curran?
Yep, we once an application is submitted, then we'll begin our review and have a more detailed discussion next meeting.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. On behalf of Anglebrook, I appreciate this opportunity. We would, if at all possible, like to construct this earlier in the summer, if that is amenable to the board. I read in your code that there is a provision for certain site plan applications or amendments of a limited scope where the board may consider waiving the public hearing. I know it's early to do that, given that we haven't made an official submission, but would ask that you might consider that as we go forward, if appropriate.
I would ask Steve and Joe for their comment. I mean, this seemed to me it would fall under that, but I would ask their opinions on that.
In my mind, that's reasonable given the scope of the site and the scale of the proposed modifications. But we'll see the official submission, but I'm in agreement with that.
Yeah, and I think that's fair as well. It's something you can wait to determine, but there's no bar to you proceeding that way.
Yeah, seems reasonable.
Yes.
Yeah, agreed.
I agree too.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
Good evening.
And last on our agenda is our electric vehicle charging stations. I guess this is really just more for, for some discussion, throwing some stuff out. This was brought to us, I believe, for the first time at our last meeting or 2 meetings ago. So, and I think, Dave, did you have some comments on this?
Yeah, the residential element.
The
Yes.
residential aspect.
Yeah, I hadn't rushed into this issue because I wanted to know more exactly where the town was coming in on whether it's just a commercial aspect, whether it's a residential component, if there were specific issues related to the topic so that I had a better understanding and I was more focused and efficient in getting you the information you need. The one thing I did share with you earlier today, there is a fellow who lives around the block who has a Tesla. He has a charging station right in his front walkway. So I took a picture of it and I sent it to you just to show you as an example of how somebody has accommodated that piece of infrastructure within their lot. Whether this needs a specific type of building permit because of the volume of electricity, I don't know, but I'm assuming that's some of the issues that we would get into in more detail. So I was really looking for more input from or feedback as to how or what the concerns are from your board so that I can be more focused.
I would prefer to see that post in the backyard or side yard, not the front.
Well, but shouldn't we be basically talking about commercial at this point in time?
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
issue is it's whether or not,
We
right,
have to
whether,
amend our code.
right, whether or not an exception use permit is required. And if it is, what are the parameters for it? If it's not, can it be waived? Our town code is embedded with provisions on amount of parking spaces, and there were some issues brought up by the town board regarding allocation of those spaces and whether or not these spaces compete, if you will, with more traditional gas-powered vehicles. And so that was something that we kicked around. Well, actually, that was the genesis for this. I believe Steve can probably shaking his head. And then we had a pretty robust discussion last month regarding electric use vehicle, its increase in popularity, the demand to have charging stations around. And so I kind of think that's where we're at. I don't know if we drafted a memo to the town board or at least to the town supervisor himself, who was the one that wanted us to kind of go down this path of discussion. And if we did, I didn't see it, and I apologize if it was sent out.
No, I don't believe we got to that point. The town has applications for electric vehicle charging stations at commercial properties and or commercial properties inquiring about what that process is. And so the question is, does the zoning code allow it? And if not, what should the changes to the zoning code be to allow, control, restrict as the board sees fit that use?
Right.
Okay.
And Dave Smith brings up an interesting point. While we're addressing that, we should address the use in the private residence at the same time. I don't mean we, but in terms of amending the code, they should
Right.
consider that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll focus on the commercial aspect first and then circle back with kind of the components on the resident. It sounds like the commercial is the one that's the hottest issue that needs to be addressed. So we'll
Yeah,
hit that.
I wouldn't. I'll be. So, Dave, you weren't at the meeting last month. So, for full disclosure, I am a fully automated electric vehicle owner. So, I've got a little bit of knowledge in this subject based on my ownership and the research that I did to purchase this vehicle. I think that if we start looking to control residential electrical charging stations, that is going to create a lot of controversy. And I think right now we should stay focused on the commercial aspect of it.
Yep.
I do believe that the town supervisor's concern is worth the inquiry that he has put forth in front of this panel here, and I think that that's something that we can address and send back to him. But I think for residential stuff, I don't think we're ready to cross that bridge yet.
Okay.
Let's definitely
I'm not
stick
sure that
stick to
residential requires regulation.
what's that, Dennis?
I'm not sure. I don't see residential would require regulation, certainly reviewed by us. I think it's a building department issue.
Yeah, that would be a building department issue.
Exactly. It's a building department NEC electric code issue to make sure that it's wired
That's it.
properly.
I think it's already covered.
We're not going to do a site plan on a single family home.
Yeah, you can't. And while I do agree that maybe the outside charging station is something I haven't seen before, although not uncommon for people. Hey, listen, if I don't have a garage, how am I going to set this up? And for that particular vehicle model that I saw, that is an all-weather charging station, and it complies with, as long as it's grounded properly and follows all of the NEC and everything else. I don't think that that's too much of an issue. I think on the commercial end, though, I think we need to ensure that there's a proper allocation, right? I don't think that we want to swamp a 25 car or 50 car capacity parking lot with 40 electric charging stations. I do think that we should probably discuss a proper ratio, a location for it, again, and that's more of an aesthetics issue or even a functionality issue. It's that sort of stuff that I believe that Rick Marcy is concerned about. His comment that he rarely sees vehicles parked in those spots, and that could be true, and that's perception, but it also doesn't take a very long time to charge a vehicle either. That may be a misconception out there. I mean, I can go to a supercharging station and I can get a 300-mile charge on my vehicle in about 40 minutes. So you might not see the car parked there all day, and it's an amenity for people who are in these shopping centers so that they can charge and do
Shop.
something right. Shop. I didn't want to be as specific, but dine, shop, kill time, as opposed to just sitting in your car for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, or whatever the case may be. So,
Well, let's give Dave some time to do some research and put some thoughts together, and we'll revisit this issue at the next meeting if that's okay with everyone.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, it sure as heck isn't going away.
it's only getting bigger. As you know, I barked out the statistics last month, the industry and how they see that this boom is happening. There's certain American auto manufacturers have committed to full electric vehicles by a certain date.
25 and 50.
Yep. And so I think those are things that we need to look at. We need to look ahead and,
Sure.
and adopt this into our master plan, codify it with some regulations so that we don't overdo it. I think that's always a fine balance. So
just a question. So we had before us, the early days proposal of a multifamily housing and we were discussing parking lots. So with this all in mind and on our radar, and question for Dave and Steve would be, is there anything that should be considered now to at least get the infrastructure in place so that as there comes the time when we get saturation of these vehicles in the market, and we may have residents there who obviously don't have garages and they're going to need to be able to charge, that we should be able to have the applicant have the means available to distribute and provide facility for charging. So I think that would be something to kind of get on everybody's radar and be prepared to discuss. It's all happening at the same time. I mean, would you agree, Chris? This is the
yeah, I mean, I think it's and any of the engineers can comment. It's probably easier to already have access to the infrastructure during a raw build than it is for you to retrofit an already built area.
Absolutely.
So I do think that that's a very good point, Vicky. Probably something that we should also include in this dialogue is whether or not, hey, if we're going to build a complex, a shopping center, or an apartment house or houses, as we see with the previous applicant, if you've got more than X amount of spaces, percentage wise, you might want to consider or might have to throw in an electric charging station, because out of those 50 vehicles, one will be electric or 40 or whatever ratio we come up with.
Right.
So I do think that that's probably another aspect to put in there. And I agree with that. It's not going away. Electric vehicle, in the beginning, everyone was hesitant, and, our dependence on fossil fuel vehicles and the muscle and the power that you get out of it. And that's true. And there's always a niche for that, for super turbocharged gas engines. But my electric vehicle, I can do 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. And if I pay,
you would try.
Not that well, no, 60 is within the speed limit. It's okay. There's no regulation on the speed of acceleration. It's don't pass the top speed.
It helps very much on the sawmill. For sure.
It totally does. It's like I said, they are gaining in popularity. I think that goes without question.
Chris, question. You said it takes 40 minutes to fully charge your car?
Super.
I'm in the market for a new car and I'm wondering what to get.
Well, we could talk offline, but the speed in which these lithium ion batteries can be charged is dependent on the amount of current that comes in. Right. So the higher the amperage, the faster it charges. That's probably the simplest formula. And again, not an electrical engineer, but anyone here that knows can either fight me on it or validate it. The higher the amperage, now the superchargers, when they're 3-phase commercial grade high amperage, which is what allows for the speedy charging. Most setups at home, you could max out at 50 amps if your circuit breaker is big enough. 30 seems to be pretty common, and I can fully charge my car at a slow rate. So you don't want to over supercharge, by the way. It's actually not good for the battery life, at least according to the manufacturer of the vehicle that I own. And so often within my garage at home, it'll trickle charge. And within 8 hours, I'll have a full capacity. I have the extended range battery, which can get me, depending on how fast I accelerate, I can get almost 400 miles out of it before I have to charge it again.
Wow.
So it's again, they've been able to tweak the endurance on these things. And I think that was always, for the industry, that was always the challenge, is to be able to, hey, if I choose to drive to Chicago, you know, do I have to charge my vehicle? Where do I go? Gas stations are much more prevalent than electrical stations. And this is where the model of having charging stations in areas, the facilities that I can use as rest stops or to shop or to eat and dine, that's why you want them there. And so again, that's something that we should take into consideration, what the industry plan was, their rollout and their concept is to be able to do that.
Okay.
And on the other side of it, if you want to draw business and stay competitive, you want to have parking stations that people will want to go to.
Exactly. You know, the larger malls, you see them there. And that's all for a reason. They don't put them in empty lots. You know, they put them where there's other things to do. So.
Okay.
Well, I think we have the direction. I think David has the
Yep.
direction as to what needs to be analyzed to provide the right input to the board.
All right. Well, welcome again, Dave. Enjoy
Thank
working
you.
with you. And Steve, I'm glad you're still on board.
Likewise.
Jennifer, just, you know, back him up because sometimes he needs direction, as you know.
I need to bring the experts sometimes. So
All right. Thank you all very much. Our next
Thank you.
meeting is Wednesday, June 9th. Look for a motion to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. And thank you again,
Thank you.
Vicky, for
Aye.
getting the phone.
Thank you for picking it up for me.
No problem. Good night, all. Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night.